ಬಿತ್ತಾರದ
Ankita, can we start?
Yes, sir. We can start. We have about 60 participants.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. So what I'll do is I will mute everyone. Okay. And after the presentation is done, I will unmute and then we can have a Q&A.
Yeah, I will just give a small brief.
Please, yeah.
I start. A very good morning to everyone. Thank you for joining this webinar on a Saturday morning. I am sure it is going to be a great learning experience for all of us. Before we start, I would like to give a small brief about Mr. Venkatesh. Mr. Venkatesh Varadachari is an edtech entrepreneur. Prior to his entrepreneurial career, he was a proprietary trader and a hedge fund manager for around 14 years. He has been investing in the global markets for around 25 years in his personal capacity and for his clients. Mr. Venkatesh is a PGP alumnus from IIM Bangalore and a master's in financial engineering from NUS Singapore. A very warm welcome to you, sir. Dear participants, you can post your questions in the chat box. Please do not interrupt during the webinar. You can post your questions and Mr. Venkatesh will answer all of them after the webinar. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much. Okay. So good morning. And we'll start now. Just a moment. Just a moment. Okay. First, a quick disclaimer. What follows is not an investment advice. This is purely for information purposes, and you should do your own due diligence. Okay. With that out of the way, we will start. So basically, this is the thesis. The current global monetary system is on its last legs, and the world is transitioning to what we'll call as a Bretton Woods 3.0. And this is a process and not an event. And during this process, gold and silver will get remonetized. And this transition process presents an once-in-a-generation opportunity to invest in bullion and profit. Okay, it's not every day that this kind of things happen. In one's working life, probably something like this happens once in 50 years. And that's an opportunity to make substantial money, as we will see later in the presentation. Okay. So this will be the webinar flow. First, we will spend some time going through the history of gold and silver as money. more specifically as store of value. And then we will take a look at the current monetary system and see actually how we got here in the first place. And then we will see what are the possible configurations of Bretton Woods 3 and what are the challenges that come with them. And then next we'll see why gold and silver now. I mean, why do you want to invest in the here and now? And finally, we'll say what is the best way to express our investment idea so that we can profit. All right. Okay, so both gold and silver have a 2,500 year track record as store of value. Okay, for a variety of reasons. Primarily, mainly because both of these metals are chemically stable. Gold even more so than silver. So basically, they tick a number of boxes. One of them being scarcity. The second thing is, oftentimes we think that whatever is scarce can be used as a store of value, but that is not usually the case. If you think about it, there are many other elements that are rarer than both gold and silver. For example, rhodium, right? Say rhodium. So we don't use rhodium as a store of value. And why is that? So basically, the market gravitates towards what's known as hard money as a store of value, right? To put things in perspective, gold has retained its purchasing power over thousands of years, and that is no mean feat. Back in the day, 1 ounce of gold could buy you a very high quality toga as a dress, right? Now we see that even now, 1 ounce of gold can get you a nice Savile Row suit. So it's really remarkable that it has managed to, maintain purchasing power. And one of the reasons, actually the main reason is because it is hard. It's hard money. And what do you mean by hard money? What are the characteristics? Primarily, just the way we have a PE ratio for stocks, right? The one measure that gives you a lot of information about valuation. When it comes to moneyness and hardness of money, we have something called a S to F, that is stock to flow ratio. Stock is simply the quantity of that commodity that is available, right? And flow is the incremental supply annually. Now, gold has a stock to flow ratio of around 55 to 65, right? What does it mean? It may basically any given year, the output of gold is around 1.5 to 2% of above ground stock. Now, why is this important? Now, think about this way. Whenever a commodity price goes up, the producers attempt to produce more. The supply increases. That's natural. Now, let's consider two cases. In one case, for example, gold, the incremental supply is only 1.5% to 2%, regardless of how much the price moves up. So now, because of this, you are confident of storing your money, your wealth in gold, because you know that no matter what happens, the producers cannot dilute you massively. Something like, say, rhodium, right? Basically the above ground stock. I mean, there is no stockpile. So pretty much whatever is produced is consumed. There is a demand from the industrial side. So the above ground stock is very little. And if the price goes up, what gets produced annually, right, can be multiple times of above ground stock, which means that if you're storing your wealth there, you'll get massively diluted. So that is the idea, right? So basically, wealth gravitates towards commodities that have a high stock to flow ratio. And now, if you in the recent past we have Bitcoin, but otherwise over the last 2,500 years, the number one and number two commodities with high stock to flow ratio are gold and silver. And that's one of the reasons why global central banks, despite currently we have a monetary system where the global reserve currency US dollar is not backed by anything, unbacked. Even so, central banks are buying gold. And why is that? It's mainly because they understand that it is a real store of value. So, just a moment. Okay, so here is a chart. Gold is around 60. Silver is 20 plus. Bitcoin now currently it's over 100 after the recent halving. Otherwise, if you look at even otherwise rare commodities, platinum known as white gold has a stock to flow ratio of around 10ish. Palladium is even lower. As these things are produced, they get consumed, right? So if you're storing your wealth there, your money will get diluted. Okay, so now we see that as of now, gold and silver are the top two avenues for storing your wealth over long periods of time. And now we'll come to the current monetary system, right? So one thing is that when we read our textbooks, right, the textbooks, economics textbooks, banking textbooks simply describes the system as it is. And there is nothing wrong with it, right? We are there to learn about these things. But the downside is oftentimes you simply assume that whatever we have now is a result of, very high quality thought process and engineering. And that is not usually the case. So currently we have, what is our monetary system like globally, right? So basically we have central banking and then we have commercial banks which create money through fractional reserve banking, right? I mean, ever since I've been born, this is what I've been seeing. So it is reasonable to assume that this is how these are the correct configurations and this is how things should be. But there are other configurations as well. So in the past, there have been cases when there have been countries where there was no central banking. For example, the US was one of the last major powers to have a central bank. The Federal Reserve got created in 1913. And during the Second Great Industrial Revolution, from 1850s to just before World War I, US had free banking. Free banking as in there is no central bank. And then, initially when banking started, it was full reserve banking. We never had fractional reserve initially. So all these configurations are possible, but currently this is what we have. And how does the monetary system work now? We have at the heart of every country, we have a central bank, and there is a central bank reserves, and then currency notes with people like us. There's a small fraction, right? Think about it. What percentage of your money do you really have in the terms of currencies? Very little. Most of it is in the form of bank deposits. And then, based on this central bank reserves, commercial banks use fractional banking to create money. Okay, this is very important to understand. And so this particular slide, you would really get it. I'm sure most of you know it anyway, but I'm just having it so that we are all on the same page. In the current system, credit or debt is money. It's a debt-based monetary system. Okay, and commercial banks create money when they issue a loan, and money is extinguished when loans are repaid or defaulted on. And the central bank acts as a lender of last resort. And if you actually think through what this means, the system is inherently unstable. Okay. Again, if you read the economic textbooks, it all looks very clever. right? It looks very well engineered, but it's far from that. Then we ask the question, if this is the case, then how did we end up here in the first place? And globally, the system is US dollar centric. The US dollar is world's reserve currency, and it is not backed by any scarce asset. And the global monetary system is tied to the Federal Reserve that exports US problems to the world. And among the various fiat currencies, US dollar remains the cleanest dirty shirt, as in best among the worst. Right? It's like RG, relative grading, right? I mean, US dollar is is probably the top currency around, only because other currencies are worse. Okay. So now, because of this unstable monetary system, what are the problems we are facing today? The current model is highly inflationary. Inflation is basically a pump that transfers wealth from savers to borrowers. Okay. What's happening is over time, wealth is being transferred from savers to borrowers. And the rest of the world pays an imperial tax to the US. The US can print green papers with various founding fathers' pictures and exchange them for real world goods and services. And just about everywhere, right? The actual inflation is much higher than government stated inflation. And what does it mean? That means that if you keep your money in the bank, the purchasing power shrinks year after year. And therefore, people are forced to take risks as they search for yield to counter this inflation. And at the moment, the US dollar remains the greatest export of USA. Right? China exports various stuff. We export services. What does US export? Primarily US dollar. And this is the current system. Now, we need to ask, if this is so dysfunctional, how did we even end up here in the first place? Right? So it is a bit of a long story. Now, if any of you had seen Tucker Carlson Putin conversation, after that we had this meme. This meme was floating around all over the place, and that's mainly because Putin was a bit long-winded. But they are missing the point. The point was that in order to understand the Russia-Ukraine conflict, you need to go back to understand the whole picture. And so that's what we are going to do. Next 10-15 minutes, we are going to go back and see how the monetary system evolved over time, so that we get an idea of how we end up here in the first place. So far fine? Okay. Let's go back to, just put a thumbs up or something so that, because you're all muted. So it'll be, yeah, okay, George, Sebastian, just a moment. Yeah, you can unmute yourself and say something, George. Just a moment. Okay, yeah, you can lower your hand and,
Yeah. Hi,
yeah,
Venkatesh.
yeah.
Am I audible?
Yeah, you are, yeah.
Thank you so much for doing this session. I just wanted to understand if you could repeat why wealth is being transferred from savers to borrowers. That part was a little unclear, and also how the USD is the biggest export of the USA.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Okay.
taking
Okay, let me give you an example, right? So inflation is, you can see inflation as basically a kind of tax. Let me give an example, right? Basically, when you are, so why do you save money? Let's go back to first principles. You put in some work, you get the fruits of your labor, let's say 100 rupees you get, you consume 10 rupees of that. And right now you don't want to consume the remaining 90, so you save it. Okay, in today's context, you keep it in a bank, so that somewhere down the line in the future, you want to consume that, right? But then you'd be happy, for example, let's say for for 10 rupees you can get a cup of tea or something like that. These are very basic, simplified examples, but they drive the point home, right? So let's say, so you earn 100 rupees. So your purchasing power currently is 10 teas, okay, each tea being 10 rupees today. Now, you are consuming one cup of tea, and then other 90 rupees you are keeping in the bank. Now, 2 years later, you have water money in the bank, plus accrued interest, less taxes on the interest. So that is what your pool of money is, right? Now, if you're basically if the price of the tea is inflating only to the extent of your interestless taxation, you should be able to get 9 cups of tea with whatever money you have left after 2 years. But if the tea is inflating at a much faster rate, your purchasing power actually shrinks. So far clear?
Yes, sir.
So instead of 9, you are able to now get only 80 or 70. Correct, right? So as a saver, you are getting shafted for no fault of yours. Right. Now, take the flip side. If you are a borrower, it is actually good to do this, right? You borrow money and say at 10% and invest in an asset that inflates at a faster rate, so that you can repay. Your repayment actually costs less, adjusted for the inflation of the asset that you own. Okay, this is a mirror image, right? The other side of the coin, right? Now, if these all this inflation compounds over time, right? Now, if you do the math over a longer period, you would actually find that these are two sides of the same coin, right? What they for example, right, who are the biggest beneficiaries in, because of this debt-based monetary system? It is the people who can get cheap loans, right? Let's say if I'm in the US, I get loans at 3%, 4%, whatever. Then I invest in equities, stock market inflates at 30%. I make money. Right. So I don't want the money. I just borrow it and then I invest, and the assets inflates. I can then liquidate the asset and then repay my loan with interest, and still I'm coming out ahead. You get the picture, right? So if the environment is inflationary, then you are better off borrowing, right? So this is it, right? Ideally, you don't want inflation. Right, even though the conventional speak is that they should have 2% inflation and things like that.
Yeah.
Now you step back and ask, why can't it be 3 or why can't it be 1? Right, there is actually no answer. Right, so you find that as we go through the presentation, we'll find that a lot of what passes off for economics today is primarily politics. Yeah. So the other part about the US exporting US dollars, we'll get to that as we as we see how the system evolved. Okay, fine. Hello.
Sir, thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay. So let's now go to 1850. So pretty much the entire world is on gold standard. India and China are on silver standard, but if you leave that, Europe is on gold standard, the US also. And what do you mean by gold standard? Gold standard simply means that the currency that this countries issued were convertible to fixed amount of gold. Right, so which means that the currency versus gold exchange rate is fixed, and this convertibility is on demand, even for the people, even for public, right? And so we had so therefore, You had, for example, in the UK, the pound was convertible into certain grams of gold. You have US dollar convertible into certain different quantities of gold. So since these are all fixed, then the exchange rate between even the US dollar and the sterling pound is also fixed. So unlike today, that was a world of fixed exchange rates. And London was world's financial capital and the world's banker. Large portion of world's lending and borrowing used to take place there. For example, when Napoleon sold Louisiana to US to fund his wars, it was the London bankers who brokered that. And as I said before, the Federal Reserve was created only in 1913. So all the way from 1850 to 1940, 1913, the US was on free banking. There was no central bank, no Federal Reserve. And again, a lot of things, right? We think that RBI is part of government and so on. People think Federal Reserve Bank is owned by the US government, and because the name looks like it, Federal Reserve Bank, right? But back in the day, I mean, most central banks, including Bank of England, were privately owned. US had free banking till 1913. 2/3 of world's gold was in bank vaults, to be specific, in central bank vaults. And gold standard, free trade, low taxation, and small governments. Okay, it's a different world back then. And remember, just before First World War, most of the world was monarchy, right? Monarchies in Austria, Russia, Germany, and everywhere else. And technologically, that was a great time. We had what is called as a second industrial revolution. We had the telephone, telegraph, and radio. That's when electrification happened on a large scale. Think about it, right? I mean, the world went from having no electricity to electricity. That's a huge jump. I mean, whatever we have today, AI, cloud, mobile, these are the defining technologies of our time. They all pale compared to what happened, because back in the day, they went from 0 to 1, right? Automobile, airplane, so on and so forth. And the gold standard, and all this prosperity was pinned by gold standard. Mainly, the gold standard kept government from spending money randomly, and it kept the money supply growth in check. Because government could issue money, or the central banks could issue money only to the extent of the gold they had in their vaults. And the entire system was self-stabilizing. Even though there were credit cycles up and down. So there is a short-term volatility in the economic cycle, but the trade-off was that you actually had a long-term stability. Right now, what we have is the short-term stability with huge imbalances that result in a long-term dislocation. And so basically, the trade deficits were settled through gold transfers. So the countries which were big net importers, right? The gold would flow out of them to the countries which were net exporters. And so the countries which import heavily, the gold leaves. So because the gold leaves, the money supply contracts, the economy also contracts, and therefore the demand gets lowered, and therefore the imports also reduce. Right. So that's how it stabilizes. Likewise, the country which is a net exporter, gold flows in, so they can create more money. More money creates a boom, and because of the boom, they spend more, and there are more imports. Right. So it's self-correcting. As I said, the system optimized for long-term stability at the expense of short-term fluctuations. And then we had World War I and II. That changed a lot of things. But even just before the World War I, US had already become the world's largest economy, and US GDP was equal to the GDP of the next three economies, right? UK, France, and Germany combined. And so whenever this kind of wars happen, right, the governments end up spending a lot of money. Right. So they print money, essentially. They went off the gold standard one by one. Right? Because gold standard means that you can't issue money when you don't have commensurate gold. So that's a constraint. And as I say, government don't like working under constraints. And all these wars have to be funded. They cost money. Throughout the war years, basically, much of the great powers in Europe spent 50% of their GDP on war. So, and then once the war ended, they all slowly wanted to get back to gold standard, because at that time it was considered as a matter of honor. And the US, like now, right, because it was so far away from Europe, they were basically supplying the pickaxe and shovels of the day, right? Basically supplying arms, food grains, and so on to the feuding countries in Europe. And they made a lot of money. And all these were transferred in the form of gold. So by the end of World War I, US had already become much, much more powerful than the other countries. And the European countries and the UK were locked in a vicious cycle of claims and counterclaims. US had lent to UK, and UK had lent part of that money to France and Russia, who were the allies. And back in the day, the business model was that you wage a war, and if you manage to win the war, then you can put the entire bill of war on the losing party, like in modern litigation. And basically, all the Germany was forced to foot the war bill, and that created all kinds of problems. And then slowly, as I said, I mean, before the war, London was the global center of finance. And after the war, they were basically crippled financially, but they're still, a colonial power. They thought they were still there. And in order to save the face, they went back to gold standard at the pre-war parity, even though they printed a lot of money in the interim, right? So it never actually didn't make sense. But, we are commenting on them with the benefit of hindsight. So you find that different countries went back to gold standard in different ways. So when Britain went back to gold standard in the pre-war rate, the savers were made intact. Right? Because if the pound was X pounds for 1 gram of gold before the war, even after the war, when they went back to gold, it was X dollars of a pound for gold. So the savers were made whole. And in the process, what happened was basically by doing that, they tightened the economy, and then there was a lot of joblessness and so on. So the burden of the pain, all the expenditure, fell on businesses, workers, and so on. But the savers didn't take the pain. Germany went overboard the other way. So they hyperinflated the currency, and then what that meant was that the middle class completely shrank, and actually middle class ceased to exist. Think about it this way, right? I mean, when you say hyperinflating the currency today, IMB median salary is like, say, 35 lakhs or something. 20, I mean, let's say in my generation, when we graduated, it was like 2.5 lakhs per annum. Okay, 1997, back in the day. And so people like us would have saved some money over 20 years or so, right? And then suddenly now, 2 years later, India hyperinflates everything, and then everybody gets 5 crore salaries per annum. Then what that means is that all my 20, 25 years worth of hard work, whatever I have managed to save, becomes 1 month salary of somebody. Then basically, I mean, I have been shafted, right? So that's what hyperinflation does, right? It destroys the savings, accumulated savings of people. And so, and all these things resulted in the, Hitler coming to power and so on, because the German people are so pissed off. Right? And France did somewhere in between. They devalued the currency and then went back on gold standard. So all this, war-related skirmishes had knock-on effects. The US, because of their business model of, being a supplier to the warring parties, had gold coming in, and that resulted in a boom because money was easy then, right? Because more gold is coming in, the central banks can issue more currency. So we had what is called as the roaring 20s. And then, when they tightened the money supply, there was a stock market crash of 1929. Elsewhere in Europe, there was a bank failure in Austria that spread to Germany and other parts of Europe, and therefore there was a capital flight. And one by one, all the countries went off the gold standard, and basically they started, currencies again started floating. The currency wars, trade wars, all the free trade reversed. The decline of global trade, and then everybody fighting for the same small market share, shrinking market, that resulted in rise of nationalism, and then World War II. So this is how the whole thing happened, right? So this is something that it's very important. We need to understand it. So 1933, that was during the Depression. Franklin Roosevelt came out with this Executive Order 6102, basically that criminalized U.S. citizens from holding gold. So the U.S. citizens were forced to surrender their gold to the government at the then prevailing exchange rate of 20.57 or something per ounce. So that's just an executive order, right? That's what. So basically, government confiscated. When they confiscated, they gave some money, right? And then this is what Executive Order 6102. It is a dramatic violation of private property rights by the U.S. government. And suddenly, from 1933 till 1974, it was criminal. U.S. citizens were not allowed legally to hold gold. And after they surrendered their gold at 20.67, immediately the gold was revalued to $35. So essentially, basically, the citizens are shafted big time, right? And with that, US goes off the gold standard domestically, right? So if you're a citizen, you can't convert your dollars to gold like before, right? So if you see all these things, right, these are got nothing to do with the gold standard. It basically all these decisions that are taken to convert this, not convert that, going off the gold standard, so on and so forth, are primarily because of political decisions. And then after end of World War 1944, we had something called a Bretton Woods agreement. So Bretton Woods is simply a place in New Hampshire where US called all the other guys. By then, US was the undisputed hegemon. UK became one of the largest debtor in the world. So there are only two powers, great powers, US and Russia. But Russia also, because it was in Europe and it fought the war, they are also economically crippled. So pretty much it's US dwarfing everybody else economically. And therefore, they were able to, in this whole Bretton Woods agreement, impose their will on the rest of the world. And what's interesting is at the time, the person who represented the British interests was John Maynard Keynes, probably the most famous economist of the time. Even today, it's very difficult to see any economics textbook that does not have John Maynard Keynes somewhere, right? And despite that, nobody had heard of Harry Dexter White. I don't think you had heard of him. Even I hadn't heard of him before I studied all this. So because US had most of the world's gold after World War II, so they created a monetary system, global monetary system, where US dollar became the world reserve currency. Let's see what it was. So this was the agreement. What exactly happened? What was the Bretton Woods agreement is that USD becomes the global reserve currency. And that'll be the only currency that will be convertible to gold at an exchange rate of $35 per ounce. All other currencies will have a fixed exchange rate with US dollars. And the US dollar will be convertible to gold. Just because there is an exchange rate of $35 per ounce of gold doesn't mean that common man can go and get it converted. No, that exchange rate is only available for foreign central banks. Okay? And then they created the Bretton Woods institutions, IMF and World Bank. Again, here you see a lot of how these things are political. Keynes wanted these institutions to be based in New York. IMF would give short-term loans to countries, right? Because many of them are ravaged by war. They are always. I mean, US was the biggest creditor nation after World War II, and pretty much everybody else was a debtor nation. They wanted loans to rebuild and so on and so forth. So IMF would give short-term loans, and the World Bank would give long-term loans. So that is the idea. But again, the US had it their way, and these two institutions are basically now sitting in Washington, D.C. So it's essentially, Washington, D.C. is where the politicians in the US sits, right? So these decisions, again, as you see, right, they are not, very well thought out economically. At that time, this is what the politicians in the US wanted, and they are powerful, they got their way. And then, I mean, a lot of you must be familiar with the Griffin's paradox. Griffin was an economist who said in 1916, hey, this is not such a great idea. As in, having one country's national currency being world's reserve currency, where the other central banks hold this as a reserve asset, is not all that bright. Mainly, why is that? Because every country, the first priority is home country, right? So you would have a monetary policy that's that addresses the domestic issues, and then now basically you are saying that the currency should perform a dual purpose where it would solve international issues over long term and then domestic issues short term. It doesn't work. And so generally, right, as the world rebounded after the World War II, all the central banks, everybody wanted to grow, every country wanted to rebuild. So the central banks wanted to grow their reserve assets. Like, for example, India, right, in 1991, we had to pledge our gold to fund our imports. But at the time, we didn't have enough US dollars. So everybody wanted to have more dollars or more reserve asset, which in that case was US dollar, right? So which means that there's a continuous demand for US dollars. And how will US supply them? Primarily by running huge trade deficits, current account deficits, right? So that's why I said the US is the biggest exporter is US dollar, because that's all they need to do, right? They just print US dollars and supply to the world, and the rest of the world gives various stuff, right? So back in the day, at least US dollar was backed by gold, and the central banks could convert to gold, so it was not really printing, but but nevertheless, US had to run massive trade imbalances. And these things accumulate, right? Unlike the gold standard where it is self-stabilizing, this is all one-way street. And so therefore, because the imbalance accumulate and they are not self-correcting, the monetary system is unstable. And then in 1960s, a couple of other things happened. US went into military adventurism in Vietnam. All this again cost money. And then Lyndon Johnson's the Great Society welfare social programs. Again, all these welfare programs cost money, right? Government spending money. Again, US had committed to the world that the parity would be $35 per ounce of gold, because they say we have a lot of gold. So whatever dollars you have, central banks, at least foreign central banks, so you can convert it into gold. But when again the world suddenly started seeing that more and more dollars are getting cranked out, because US was printing blindly, and then because they had to spend money, right? How do you spend money? How do you fund the wars? How do you fund the social programs, right? So slowly other countries started getting nervous, and France exchanged its US dollar reserves for gold. Charles de Gaulle did that over 3-year period, right? And US suspecting that US actually doesn't have as much gold as it's required to back the issuance of currencies they are having circulating. And most other central banks generally believed believed US. And 1971, Nixon temporarily suspends the convertibility of gold to US. He said that, okay, no more conversion of US dollar to gold. So basically, this is a default. Okay, so US defaulted to the rest of the world on its promise to convert US dollar to gold. So till 1971, this convertibility was there. And that is why the foreign central banks, including India, we were accumulating US dollar reserves because the prevailing paradigm was that it is good as gold. And whenever we want, we could actually go and give the US dollars to US government, the Federal Reserve, and convert it into gold. So that got severed. And that is how we are ended up wherever we are now. Okay. So that is why we have a system where there is a reserve currency, which is US dollar, but that's not backed by anything. So this is not a very well engineered, well thought out, well designed system, right? This is basically jugaad, right? This whole current system that we have is born out of US default. And why did they default? Because they're printing more money, wars and other governments printing and so on. So everywhere, again, we go back and see it's that governments, and now we all have democracies, right? So governments like to spend. And when I say spend, disproportionate to the amount they collect as revenue. Because if you start taxing, end of the day, if you want to balance the budget, then you want to raise the taxes. If you raise taxes, you will not get elected next time, right? So you can't raise taxes. Other option is to borrow money, right? The third option is to print money. So governments are typically using option 2 and 3. Now, so what happened suddenly now, this currency started floating after the Nixon shock, because now there is no valuation anchor. What does US dollar even mean? It's just suddenly it became a paper currency, right? It's not convertible to anything. And so currency started floating again. And that's how it was till 1976 when in the Jamaica occurred. Formally, they got together and decided that Bretton Woods system is over. Right now, it's all free floating, and they all got together and they decided that gold will officially. Hello, what is that? What is that? Hey guys, 1 second. Somebody is saying something. I'll mute it. Mute all. Okay. Okay. And then in Jamaica, gold was officially phased out of international monetary system. IMF sold its hold of gold, and then we entered this brave world where we have a reserve currency that's not backed by anything, and the world was okay with it. And then we had something called what's called the Bretton Woods 2.0. Unlike the previous one, where the different countries came together, discussed, and agreed to a system, right? Which again was imposed by the US. At least they signed off on that. So Bretton Woods 2, as in the current prevailing system, it's not agreed, right? It's basically the US defaulted on convertibility, and then from then on, it's just improvisation. Okay. And but what US did cleverly was in 1974, they had this deal with Saudi that Saudi will price oil only in US dollars. Okay. And in return, US will buy this oil from Saudi, and they will sell them arms and also protect them with the US military might. Okay. So this is called the petrodollar deal. And in 1975, all the other OPEC countries decided to price oil only in US dollars. So, every country needs oil, correct? So oil is energy. Every country needs energy. So therefore, every country needs to have dollars so that they can buy oil, because most countries are importers of oil, right? Including us, India, right? So we need dollars, because now the Saudi and OPEC are going to sell oil to us only if we pay them US dollars. So what this did is to create a market and demand for US dollars. So despite defaulting, dollar still remained a reserve currency. There's a demand, and it's still the number one currency because of all of this. Okay. That is it. Now we will. So this is the back context. So this is to give an idea of how we ended up currently to the current system where it's all debt backed. The reserve currency is not backed by anything, and so on and so forth. But this is basically, as I said, a jugaad and improvisation, not a well thought out thing, right? And inherently unstable. That is the main thing. Now, in 1970s, because the dollar got untethered from gold, they could, print merrily and spend, and that caused the inflationary boom, right? And so in the decade of 1970s, gold went from $35 an ounce to $800 an ounce, 850. So in 10 years, it went up around almost close to 25 times, 25x, right? So this is a gold chart. This doesn't tell you the whole story, because if you see the chart this way, as most of us like to see, this is a linear chart, right? It looks like currently gold has moved up quite a bit because it looks similar. But if you this is a log chart, semi-log chart, where the x-axis is same, but the y-axis is basically a logarithmic scale, so that equal distances are equal percentages. Now you can see that great, the huge move in 1970s, right? The 25x move you can see, and then we had another move, another long gold bull market in 2000s. Now in this log chart, you can see that the current move does not even register. We are very, very early in the gold bull market. It looks as if it has not even started, right? So the thesis is, as the current monetary system unravels, we are going to have a similar move as in the 1970s. Okay, many-fold move in gold, and even bigger move in silver. Almost 20 times in gold, and silver went up even more, like 30 times. So that is the central idea of this presentation, and we'll see how. You see the spikes in silver? This is all log chart. This is not a linear chart. So it's a huge move, right? From $1.50 to $50, right? So we are in the very early stages, as you can see, right? The move's just getting started. And between gold and silver, what I call as the oldest exchange rate in the world, for a long, long time, the ratio was 1:15, somewhere between 1:10 to 1:15. 15 units of silver for 1 unit of gold, right? And then in the middle 19th centuries, as most of Europe and other US also went on gold standard, silver got demonetized. When I say demonetized, it started getting used less and less as money. People are coming off silver standard and moving to gold standard, because gold is a harder money. And that ratio went around 50s. Now we are currently at around 80, right? But this can come down. 80 is quite high, actually. So currently, silver is the most undervalued metal in the planet. So what is the current situation now, right? The global south, when I say global south, like the BRICS and other countries, they want to de-risk themselves away from US dollar. US dollar is being used as a weapon and so on. So like this meme based out of what is it? Breaking Bad, right? Where Walter White says, "I'm not in danger, I am the danger," right? So for a lot of people, US dollar is the danger, right? So they are accumulating reserves, selling goods and services, commodities to the US, and accumulating reserves. That's our hard-earned wealth. Now that is getting inflated away because US dollar is getting printed left, right, and center. So the purchasing power of that also shrinks. The way our government is doing to us, that is what US is doing to other governments. Right? It's all same. And the thing is, the situation is so bad because the US debt situation is a train wreck. It's out of bounds. They are borrowing more and more, and the interest costs are going higher. Currently, the interest payments are even more than the defense payments. Right? You know that US spends more on defense than next 10 countries combined. and so much, right? And interest costs are even more than that, right? And they continue to borrow. As you can see this chart, right? This is like a hockey stick because the time scale on the Fred is from 1950s. It doesn't appear like a hockey stick, but it's actually quite so. So here is the thing, right? If you have seen, some of the ponds where the algae, the green algae kind of thing called a duckweed often grows. So that duckweed has this property of multiplying rapidly. So let us take a case where a pond is completely filled with duckweed over a period of 40 days. Okay, and the duckweed doubles every day. Now, on the 39th day, half the pond is covered by duckweed, and it doubles on the next day. So on 40th day, the entire thing is covered. Now, if you work backward, you find that around 35th day or so, only around 3% of the pond is covered with the duckweed. If you're walking past that pond every day basis, so for 35 days you're walking past that, you hardly see anything, right? By the end of 35th day, you find around 3% of the surface being covered by the weed, which is nothing. It doesn't even register. And then suddenly you find that in 40th day, the entire pond is covered, right, with duckweed. This is the exponential growth. And the duckweed itself is not doing anything different. It simply doubles. It's just that this exponential growth suddenly creeps upon us. And when that happens, you really have no time to react. Think about it. 40th day, the pond is full. Because it's doubling every day. On 39th day, it would have been 50%. On 38th day, it would have been 25%, and so on, right? So suddenly, when it last 2-3 days, it grows fast. People are generally shocked, even though there's nothing to be shocked at, right? Because that's an inevitable outcome of exponential growth. Now, if you see some other charts, I mean, this chart is still 2013, but I couldn't pull it from Fred from early days. But if you extend the chart to current levels, already the US debt is around 36 million, right? It's even steeper, right? US money supply is again even steeper. This is till I don't know, 2013 or something. If you have updated the current numbers, they all look like hockey stick to me, right? And if you look at Federal Reserve, the balance sheet of Federal Reserve keeps on expanding. So this is the base money on which when we talk about central banks printing money, this is what it's, right? Essentially increasing the central bank reserve assets. And it comes down a little bit, and then something breaks in the system. It keeps on going up and up and up. So this is the feature of the system, right? The debt-based system. The debt has to continuously increase for the system to survive and go forward. So what that means is that even as individual people, we borrow money, we take this loan, that loan. Eventually, we want to repay, right? Want to be debt-free, right? But the system cannot function if everybody repays. As I said, when the debt is repaid, the money is extinguished in the system. The system needs money. So therefore, ever-increasing debt is how the system perpetuates itself. But then there are a limited number of people ever-increasing debt. It doesn't make sense, right? At some point, it's going to be unstable. You look at the interest payments again, right? It's going up. And the biggest risk currently is that we had a 40-year-long bull market in US bonds. The US bond market is much bigger than the equity markets and anything. It's the biggest market in the world. And the yields are going up despite Federal Reserve cutting the rates. If the yields go up, the prices of bonds go down. What that means is that the asset price, the price of the bond goes down as yields go up. And all these bonds, the biggest market in the world, they are sitting with different banks. Right? They are the assets. These are the assets in their books. And if they're marking their books to market, then they're all going to be sitting on losses far higher than what was there in great financial crisis. So Now, why do we need a reset? Why do I say that the system needs a reset? Because multiple reasons. One is that system itself is unstable and this can't go on. You can't have a ever increasing debt, right? The debt has to be repaid. But if the debt is repaid, the system collapses, right? And then otherwise, if you see, so how was US able to drive such a good bargain during Bretton Woods? One, that's because mainly it was the largest creditor country. Now it's the largest debtor country. The situation has changed, right? They may think that they are hegemon, but essentially they are the biggest borrower in town, right? And on the rise of the global south, if you, if you look at the PPP basis, then China is already world's #1 economy. They overtaken US, and India is actually third. Russia is fourth. So the other countries are challenging the hegemony of US. They ask why do we want to have US as a reserve currency when we are growing faster than them? And then weaponization of USD. US controls the Swiss system, and they cut off Iran from SWIFT. They cut off Russia from SWIFT. So what that means is that now US is using the US dollar as a political weapon. And other countries know that tomorrow, if they do something that displeases US, they will also be cut off. Then the question is, why should they want to be a part of the system? And then again, we had GFC, Great Financial Crisis. If these guys are such great guys, then why do they have that kind of crisis in the US? We didn't have, India didn't have such a crisis. And then the bailouts, and then endless QE, and the decline of USD as store of value. So all these challenges are there. And what are the possibilities now? Okay, we say that US dollar is not a great reserve currency. Then what choices do we have? The world wants to go away from it. Right? People have a lot of US dollar reserves. They want to diversify away from that. But what choices do we have now? Can Chinese, you want to be a reserve currency? No way. The same thing, the Triffin paradox still holds, right? The idea of a single country's currency being a reserve currency that other central banks hold does not really make sense. And it's again unstable. A currency basket, more of the same, right? CBDC, to have something like, people talk about CBD, central bank digital currencies, but if you think about it, that kind of an architecture requires a buy-in from everybody. Right now, people are not even talking to each other, right? And Bitcoin maybe. And then if you see the options are very limited. Most likely people go back to some kind of a gold standard, right? So what are the challenges currently, while the world is de-dollarizing and wanting to move away from the US dollar, the fact is US dollar is still the cleanest dirty shirt, what they're saying, but getting dirtier by the day. But where are the competing currencies that can dethrone the US dollar? Because so one is store of value. The other thing, if you look at it, if a currency has to be a reserve currency, then the other central banks will hold it as their assets. When they will not hold the currency, but they will typically invest in the debt or other instruments, right? Like most central banks invest in US treasuries. And US Treasury is the deepest market in the world. Now, if China or any other country want to take the place of US dollar, they need to have those markets. What will India do with the Chinese yuan? They have to, you need to invest that in the bond market, Chinese bond market or whatever markets, and that market should be liquid. There should be hedging avenues. We should be able to sell whenever we want it. All those issues are there, which no other currency actually ticks the box. You see, right? US is bad, but we are not getting worthy competitors. And the other thing is, no government wants a gold standard constraint for itself. When I say gold standard constraint, means no government wants to go back to gold standard where the citizens say, okay, I will give so many rupees, you give me gold kind of thing, that has to be fixed. Nobody wants that. At least they do not have that kind of a contract with their citizens, right? That said, people are okay probably to have that kind of a relationship with the other central banks. Because end of the day, right, we are going to be it's an interconnected world today. We are trading with the XYZ, China, this country, that country, so on. Now, right now, nobody wants to hold anybody else's paper. because we don't know how much they are issuing, how much they are inflating, and so on, right? So this is the world in which we are in, right? And then again, right now we are pretty much democracies, and what is the central theme of democracies, right? More spending, right? People have to pander to the masses. We have to promise various welfare and social schemes that cost spending. But so basically, governments have to spend, or at least promise to spend to get elected. But then how do you fund this spending, right? You can't tax more. Again, people get angry, right? So either it's higher borrowing or debt demonetization, and that's what's been happening, right? So it's a pretty bleak situation. And as I said, there is no other market deeper than the US Treasury market. So if that is the case, then there is no other currency, BRICS currency, this, that, and all. I mean, what do you do with those things? Where will you park them, right? There is no other avenue, right? What that means is all roads currently, when the system, there's going to be system reset, right? We don't know what configuration that's going to be, and even the players don't know, right? Nobody knows. If they knew, they would have engineered something, right? This is 3 days before Paul Tito Jones had this interview where he said all roads lead to inflation. What that actually means is that all roads lead to growth, because if the environment is highly inflationary, your money is going to get less and less worth, right? As I told you, right? Just to put things in perspective, when I graduated, our median salaries are around 2.5 lakhs per annum. Now people are getting 35 lakhs per annum, or 25 years later, right? For the same work, by the way, right? Is it that the people are doing anything better or something? No, it's the same job, right? This increase in the nominal salaries is primarily because of inflation. Right. And the same thing is going to happen to you 25 years later. I mean, if you're earning 35 lakhs, 25 years later, the fresher would be earning 3.5 crores. Now, nothing wrong with that. Now, what that means is, how much do you need to save to be able to comfortably retire 25 years down the line? Think about it. When the average salary, when the starting salaries are 3 crores or something, and you're going to retire then, you need to save a lot of money, right? So that is the problem of inflation. We need to, our spending power is getting eroded, right? Now, what solution do you have, right? So this is the current context. Now, we have seen that gold and silver are store of value for long periods of time, but why now, right? We'll see. The stars are aligning for a major bull market in precious metals. So in the past, you've seen that every time the system resets, we go back to bimetallic standard, either gold or silver standard, and then again the same system starts, like government starts depegging and not honoring the contract with the gold, and then the same story. That's the story of governments from time immemorial, right? But every time they want to reset, again they go back to a gold standard where the currency is the new currency is backed by gold, and then they slowly start diluting that. And this time is very interesting because unlike in the past, before the US, it was the UK which was the hegemon, and they could impose their will and things like that. And then it was the US. Right now, they are more like first among equals. China is getting stronger, but nobody is significantly better than other people. What that means is, whether CBDC or any other thing, they can talk about it, but they're not going to get a buy-in from other people. Right? So no one is significantly superior so that they can arm twist or bully the other guy. And this being the case, gold is the only common language people speak. That would be the only acceptable outcome when the reset happens. Silver is currently completely demonetized. When I say demonetized, what is the meaning? Is that silver currently trades purely as an industrial commodity. Okay, there is no monetary premium. Nobody is buying silver as a store of value. You look around, who's buying it? Nobody, right? So at these price levels, so when I say remonetize, means people start using silver as a reserve asset, right, or as a store of value. And to do that, they'll have to pay a premium, monetary premium, right? Right now, the option premium is 0. If you're buying silver, you're actually buying an industrial metal, not a store of value. Since option price is 0, Would you be a buyer or seller of this option, right? You should be a buyer. Lastly, throughout history, no paper currency has survived the test of time. They all tend to zero against gold. Now, again, the question may ask is gold has already run up. Is it expensive? No, look at it. This is the last column. It shows how much gold has moved from 1980. And then all the other things. Gold price is basically a proxy for gold doesn't do anything. It does not even give you interest. It's basically like a thermometer where thermometer shows the temperature level. Gold shows basically gold price is a reflection of the money supply level. And money supply has gone up dramatically. Look at the S&P, it has gone up 5,000%. House prices have gone up. GDP per capita has gone up. Everything has gone up except gold. All right. And this is an illusion because they all appear gone up because there is a lot of money circulating. There's just the money supply has gone up. Right. And gold will have to catch up. Gold will catch up or the money supply will shrink. So either case, it is this is going to work. And again, to answer the question, why now? Right? The biggest players in the gold market are central banks. Okay, not the Indian retail buying, Diwali purchase and all that doesn't move the needle, right? So you can see clearly what is actually happening is till the great financial crisis, there have been net sellers for years and years, 15 years, there have been net sellers. After the GFC, people wake up, hey, this is not working, right? The system is not working, it's going to collapse. So they start buying. And after this Ukraine war, it gets even bigger. And after they seize the Russian assets, one is Ukraine war, and then they seize the Russian assets, and then using the interest from the frozen assets to and give it to Ukraine, all that kind of thing, the de-dollarization is only accelerating, right? So this is only going to, this is like a huge tanker ship turning around, right? And this is a long way to go. And look at this. The gold colored one bottom is the gold holdings as a percentage of central bank reserves for rest of the world, the emerging, the global south. It's still below 10%. And if they're going to de-dollarize, this is going to increase to 20%, 25%. And that's going to take a long time, right? So we have this 5, 10 year, 5, 6, 7 year window where they're going to continuously keep buying, right? And then prices has to go up. What is this? And you see, other thing that we are noticing is basically currently both gold and silver prices are controlled by the Western exchanges, COMEX in New York and LBMA in London. And what you're seeing is the metal is both gold and silver are getting drained away from these exchanges. From the metal, actual metal is going from west to east. Okay. And matter of time before the exchanges are cleaned out, and then it'll be the Eastern exchanges that will be setting the price, the Shanghai exchanges and other places. Not the right now the price is still suppressed and controlled, right? Though I think gold had a jailbreak early this year and silver had it couple of weeks back. But the real price discovery, the real price we will get to know once these exchanges run out of metal. And it's not done well. I mean, the gold has done pretty much like a 10% dollar, what was 8% dollar returns. And for someone like in India, right, if you are owning gold, which is priced in dollars, it's a dollarized commodity, you are actually going short on Indian rupee. And Indian rupee has been weakening only, right? It's now 84, right? For all the talk about India growing this, that, and that, if the economy is truly growing, then foreign capital will seek that kind of growth, and all that money coming in would only appreciate the rupee, right? But we are actually seeing the opposite of that. So if you are long gold, you are short rupee because the price that you see, domestic price, is a dollar price multiplied by the US dollar rupee exchange rate. So rupee is going to weaken more. Even if the dollar price does not change, the local price of gold will go up, right? It's a win-win. And here's the thing, right? Most people don't have any exposure, right? You see, this is as of 2023, and nobody has more than 10% exposure, right? The smartest investors in the US. most of them are underexposed. So what does it mean? When the price goes up, they'll only be a buyer, not a seller, because they don't have anything to sell, right? And so this is a chart, like you start from 1971. Why 1971? 1970 is when the US dollar went off the gold standard. From there, you see that all the currencies are only, this is 100. As I said, it was US dollar was $35 per ounce. Now it's $2,750 per ounce, right? So they're all tending towards zero only, right? Actually, if you look at this chart, it looks like the cleanest dirty shirt last 10 years or so seems to be Swiss franc, right? Not dollar. And other things, I don't know if any of you read this book, The Fourth Turning? Okay. Okay. This basically, it became a cult book in 1997, a book called Fourth Turning. It talks about, it looks at a US history, and then the authors found out that this follows the US history follows a 80 to 90-year-old cycle. It's basically, when you say cycle, it's an average human lifespan. Just like seasons, we have spring, summer, fall, and winter. This goes through that. And he calls these seasons as turnings. Just to put, and fourth turning is when the really, the chaos and resolution happens. The previous fourth turnings, the first one was the US War of Independence. You could imagine how chaotic that would have been, right? And then the Civil War, the next fourth turning, and then the Great Depression and World Wars. And then now we are here. So we are going to have an event, internal chaos / external chaos in the next few years. You can already see that in the US, right? The society is so polarized, right? There could be civil war any moment. And then you have all this geopolitical stuff outside. So there's a tremendous scope for internal chaos and also external chaos. And in such a situation, gold is the only asset that people are going to run. Right? And so this fourth turning is basically the same cycle. We have heard of this. Hard times create strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. And the cycle repeats over and over again, right? History repeats. So we are here, right? So the hard times are coming. And then if you look around, right, and this is something that you need to really take care, right? I mean, all you see is black swans circling around. For example, a lot of things can happen. As Lenin famously said, right, there are decades when nothing happens, and then there are weeks when decades happen, which means there are long periods when nothing happens, and suddenly in very short period, huge changes happen, right? For example, if there's a COMEX delivery failure, suddenly if the US exchanges says that I don't have silver or gold, I mean, primarily it could happen in silver, they have no silver to deliver. Believe me, I mean, you're not going to get anything in India. We are net importers of all these metals, right? And think about it. Big bank failures in 2023, Credit Suisse, globally important bank, too big to fail, that category. Systemically important bank just got merged with UBS in 2023, right? I mean, it's huge. Credit Suisse is huge. It's like saying that a huge elephant goes into a pond and there are no ripples, right? Nobody talks about it, right? So it's not like one fine day it went bust. This had happened a long time back. And just that at that point in time, the system chose to recognize that the Credit Suisse is dead. Silicon Valley Bank, Signature Bank, there's one more bank. So three of the top, First Republic, three of the top four biggest bank failures in the US history happened in 2023. Can you imagine, right? All right. So these things don't happen in isolation, right? When these big banks fail, there are a lot of other guys failing. It's just that they're not being acknowledged. In August of this year, Japanese yen carry trade blew up, Nikkei blew up, and it's like, and then the market is continuing as if nothing has happened. But you think about it, it's like someone has fallen from 30th floor or 40th floor, you would expect them to die off, or at least be massively fractured, right? So that they're out of action for a while. But what's actually happening is that the market is as if they're walking and running, right? So something's there's a problem, and it's just that we are not being told, right? And U.S. commercial real estate meltdown. You are seeing buildings in the U.S. commercial real estate changing hands at 1/4 the price of what are the prevailing price 4 years back or something like that. And these are generally bought on leverage. So which means that if it's trading at 25%, 25 cents to a dollar, the equity is wiped out. So where are these losses sitting? Who has gone bust? We don't know, right? So all these things are there. It's just a question of when they're unleashed on us, right? And that is a reality. So once again, I said all roads lead to inflation and gold. Now, how
Venkatesh
to?
sir, sorry to interrupt. Can we then
Yeah,
in
there's a
10
lot.
minutes and then we can take some questions. You
Yeah,
can
this is
come
the
for
last slide.
closures.
Yeah, this is the last slide. Okay.
Sure, sure.
So how to play this team? So basically, like when it comes to financial instruments, complexity sells, simplicity works. So all you need to do is buy physical gold and physical silver and wait till the reset happens. And central banks are repatriating gold. Not only are they buying gold, but they are repatriating gold, like including India, right? We have brought back gold from UK. Typically, in the past, people had kept gold in UK for safekeeping and all. Netherlands have brought it from UK and US. Germany has brought it from US. So that should tell you something, right? Not only are they buying, but they're repatriating from Western worlds. And so basically, I mean, the market is heavily over leveraged. These are very hypothetical and sold. So there are 400 people thinking that they own gold. For 1 ounce of gold, there are 400 ounces being sold, right? So it's like a musical chair, 400 people going around a chair or a single chair, thinking that they are going to sit. So the solution is simply buy physical gold and silver, not ETFs, not this and that, and then wait for it to resolve. And there are some references we have. If you want to learn more about any of this, these are the books I would suggest. So that's really it. And if there are any questions, I would take them. Okay, there are a lot of 25. 1 second. Okay, just a moment. I will see. Okay, I will just from bottom. I will. So you suggested buy physical gold. Can we instead buy bank? Okay, just a moment. Last one. Okay, I'll start from top. It's easier. Yeah, good. Do we get a copy of PPT? I will. Maybe I will share with Sushma or Ankita, and you can send. Or yeah, I can share them. That's not a problem, right? The PPT we can send. Okay,
Yes.
why is platinum not in the list? Yeah, so as I told, platinum is both platinum is known as white gold, but the stock to flow ratio of platinum is quite low, less than 10. Therefore, it is not typically used as a store of value. Okay. Okay, so I don't know, someone said, please increase the volume. I'm sorry, I'm just seeing it now. Can a currency like USD really be pegged again to gold? There is no reason why it's not. It's just an accounting entry. The day if US can decide that they just add 2 more zeros or 1 more zero to gold, depending on how much they're printed so far, and they can go back to gold standard, right? It's just a political will, right? And ideally, I mean, that's a distinct possibility. I mean, in fact, there's a high probability of that, right? So they simply had 1 more zero to gold. And then if they're printed 10 times more, or if they printed 30 times more, they add 30 to the current gold price. That's it. Yeah. So what I'll do is maybe I will send the PPT to alumni office, and they can send it to whoever it wants.
Yes, sir. We will send it to the registered participants.
Yeah.
Share it
So,
with us.
yeah, okay. So equities are different class altogether. So should investors be investing in gold rather than FD? Definitely, yes, right? I mean, gold has given 8 to 9% dollar returns, and then you get all the benefit of rupee depreciation. So gold has outperformed FD by a mile, especially if you are in India, right? I mean, you are getting rupee returns of 12-13% over decades. So may I know why sovereign bond being withdrawn by RBI? I have no idea why they issued that, why that is drawing. Which is best investment among mutual funds? Look, we are talking about once in a generation financial, the monetary regime reset, and there's going to be huge winners and huge losers. And gold is by far the best protection that you can have. It's money that gets transferred from deficit to surplus economies and not gold, right? Isn't paper money circulation was to gold supply? You're talking about George Sebastian. I think you asked that and I answered that. Why did price remain flat for long? Yeah. So the good question: why did prices remain flat for a long period of time in Britain? As I said, the Western the Western central banks are suppressing gold price, and I think they're slowly reducing. Just a moment, please.
Sir, can we
Yeah.
officially close?
Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Venkatesh sir, for such an insightful session. Your perspectives on investing have given us a valuable takeaway and some thought-provoking ideas. We truly appreciate your time and effort you've shared with us today. On behalf of everyone, thank you once again for your contribution and inspiring us to all to invest in gold and other this thing. Thank you, sir. Thank you once again.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you all participants for joining the session.
Yeah. So yeah, I will send the PPT to alumni office.
Sure, sir.
Thank you.
You can share it with us. Thank
Bye
you.
bye.